So welcome to our first episode of Football Performance with MKF. Today we have Stephen from Rockdale City Suns. Welcome Stephen,
Hi,
pleasure to have you on board.
How are you going? Thank you.
Good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad.
Awesome, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on board. So tell us Stephen, what is your role at Rockdale City Suns? How is the club? Tell us a little bit about yourself and the club.
Okay, we're Rockdale City Suns with the Premier League version, so park football, so to speak. My role there is the Premier League reserves coach. I was originally starting as a player, and then because of my body, so many injuries, and we didn't have anyone to pick up, I took the role as the Premier League coach for it, reserves, and yeah, that's practically where I started. Rockdale is actually, they've been in the competition for 69 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I think it's 69, something like that. And we have, the MPL side who just this weekend won the competition, the minor premiership. So that's, I don't know if you saw it on Facebook, but it was pretty
very
crazy
big
for
deal.
us. Yeah, the first time that they've won it. So in regard to the Premier League side for park soccer, my role is basically just a caretaker for this year, but next year I will be taking it full on and doing my best, I guess.
Awesome, and you played for Rockdale a little bit yourself when you were younger. Tell us a little bit about your playing experience.
Yeah, I've been there since, I started at 6 years old, played there till about 11s, then I got scouted to go to St George Budapest at the time. I think they're St George City at the moment. Then after that, I went back to Rockdale after 2 years at St George. Severed my Achilles. I was supposed to go to the AIS. I got selected to go with a couple of players from St George. Severed my Achilles at school. A pretty silly idea for me, the way I did it. After that, I just didn't play because when I severed my Achilles, I didn't have surgery or anything. It naturally recovered, just a couple stitches. And then every time I ran, I started getting numbness. And then when the numbness would stop, I'd just have excruciating pain. So I stopped till about 2021 and then came back to the local Premier League.
Yep.
Hadn't been involved with football at all till then, just watching, the English Premier League.
Yep.
And played for Arncliffe Scots for a year, then went to Banksia Tigers for I think 3 years. Played at Oatley as well, and then back to Rockdale. Because Rockdale weren't in the Premier League, so I wanted to keep a high standard.
100%.
Yeah.
And they managed to get promoted that year as well
They
when you joined as well.
Yeah, and I joined the bandwagon.
That's awesome. From when you started to now, have you noticed any changes in football? Or what would you say the biggest changes were in football, in your opinion?
I would say the pace. Back in the day, it was, the highest level that I did play was probably SAPs or reps at the moment. I would say the pace and probably the physicality. It was sharp.
Yep.
Back then, but I think now, because of the resources that we have, what we know about the body, sports science, it has gotten much quicker. But I still think we're quite off the pace when it comes to European football and things like that. But good direction. Definitely.
And now, leading into your role as a manager, what do you think makes a great player? So you viewing as a manager, what would you say, what traits, what characteristics would make a good player?
Look, for our league specifically, I think that one is being a good player. You can always, first touch has to be vital, fitness, but it's more so, it's hard to explain because you don't necessarily play on the best pitches.
Yep.
So now recently, I think this pitch will be a synthetic pitch next year. And the pitches have started to get better and better, but you could be the best player that you wanted to be, and then the ball will just bobble over your feet because the grass is not looked after. But for me personally, it's character. Everything is about the character. So I can coach a player into being good. Obviously, if the guy doesn't know how to kick a ball, it's going to be very difficult for me.
Yep.
But if you have got the basic skills, football brain, and your character, and you're always committed, commitment. It's all about commitment, really.
Definitely. And taking your experience as a player on the field, what would you say the player's opinion of a good player would be?
The player's opinion will probably be someone who's a workhorse, that can do everything,
who's got your
doesn't
back on
argue,
the field.
got your back. Yeah.
100%.
Basically a central midfielder.
Yeah, because that was your role on the field, wasn't it?
Yeah. I just, I wasn't the flashiest player, but I worked hard and I made sure that if someone did get past me, I'll do everything in my power to make sure I can recover that ball.
Awesome. And for any central midfielders watching, would you have any tips to help improve their game as a central midfielder?
Look, over the years, I've learned that you don't have to run everywhere. As much as you want to recover the ball everywhere, if you stick to your structure and your team is structured well, then you don't necessarily have to move too much. A bit of diagonal, bit of up and down, closing the channels and marking the space. And for me, I had a couple good coaches who actually said to me, look, you're running too much, don't run yourself into the ground. But and a delegator, the older I got, the more I delegated. My communication skills were better, and I think being a good communicator, someone who works hard and doesn't go out of position too much, I think that's key characteristics.
Definitely. I think that reminds me of when I was younger as well. When you're younger, you don't necessarily talk, you just run everywhere along the field because you're younger, you're fitter, you have a lot more energy. But as you get older, the levels of energy don't have as much, so now you need to communicate. You go over here, mark this player, watch number 9 coming through, watch this, watch that. So I think that's
work
the biggest
smarter,
thing.
not harder, so to speak.
Key thing, work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
And with managing a team, what are some of the pitfalls, strengths, weaknesses? What are some of the joys
have you got
of
enough
managing
time?
a team?
Look, I think it all depends. We started, personally, our season this year, we started with 26 players, and we were each week scratching our heads who we're going to leave out, this and that. Everyone was coming to training. A couple results didn't go our way, and people start to wean off, the commitment levels drop. So apart from being, a big childcare, it's you really have to, when you're looking at your squad, you have to say, all right, this guy, what's his qualities, what's his strengths, what's his weaknesses, and you just work differently for different players. So, for example, I have my captain there, who I know I can say anything to, no matter how harsh, no matter how strong, and he'll take it on board, and that'll actually help him perform. But then I know there's some players that if I say a critical word to them, it can ruin their entire confidence. So for me, only this season, like I've coached kids, but when it comes to people who are supposed to be men, it's so hard. It is
communication.
Yeah, you have to be delicate. You have to know the person. You have to break them down, so to speak. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to run my own pre-season, but I think next year coming forward, it will be, all right, let's see what these people are really worth, and then you can build a squad that way.
Definitely, and I think that's a key thing as well, because a lot of players don't understand too much about the manager's role, so they just come in and they just think the manager's going to do everything. But then a player needs to make it easier for the manager as well to be communicatable, to be able to speak to the manager, express feelings, also to take on criticism, because I know a lot of players,
they don't like it.
No criticism at all. It's just the Ronaldo, Messi show on the field, and then hope to God they listen to whatever information is communicated to them.
Look, in saying that, I've had to change my methods with certain players because I tried the tough love, didn't work. I tried being soft, it didn't work. So you sort of have to navigate, all right, gauge what kind of day has this person had? Has he come here? Does he look fresh? Did he have a big Friday night? That type of thing. And then you can sort of wean and work it off, because you can see a player's demeanour when they come to a field, just the way they hold themselves up. There's some guys who slouch and all of that. So it's really all dependent on the day.
Definitely, and especially that pre-game prep. So when a player is actually preparing to go into a field, it speaks volumes about what his performance is going to be like on the field, depending on how he rocks up to the field to begin with.
Preparation is everything, in my opinion, and you see guys who don't have a drink of water before the game, and then they're wondering why they're cramping up. So as much as you can guide them, you have to. It is like raising a child, so to speak, in some circumstances. It's not professional football for us, but we have guys who can play at a much higher level, but this is where they're at.
But it's still Premier League, still a high level for us, because it's a top division in the league here before you step up into reps, NPL, and so forth.
And most of the players don't play NPL because they can't commit to 3 days training, going, an hour drive away, things like that. So we do have quality players.
Definitely. When it comes to prepping, because you mentioned about prepping, what do you do to prep your team during the week? What sort of sessions do you structure and so forth?
For us, when the pre-season's over, you can't really necessarily work on fitness. fitness. Maybe you do like a 15-minute session of getting quite warm and things like that. Bit of sprints, bit of just getting the whole body working. Then after that, it all depends how you structure it on the week. So you can look at it and say, all right, last week we didn't get a desirable result because we weren't pressing enough. So week by week, it's like, because you haven't had too much time to prepare, COVID interrupted season as well. It's like, all right, this is what I saw on the weekend. For next week, this is what I want to work on. And it happened for us a couple times where, all right, boys, some of you aren't thinking, all right, if their defender over there has the ball, let's force them back and make sure that they can't just pass around. Make them really think about it. And that's how I structured my sessions.
Definitely a lot more on that tactical side.
Yes.
Which lies into the point that we spoke about before. Work smarter, not harder.
Yes.
Because if they're passing the ball around you, you're going to have to run twice as much to try catch up to them.
Exactly right.
You fatigue quicker, and then they just press and counter you, and that's where you can see the goal.
Exactly.
And I think that's one of the biggest things as well, that tactical play. So when you run your session, do you have any specific drills that you focus on when it comes to
for me,
small rondos or anything like that?
Yes, so I bought a couple books actually, and one of them was the is it Bielsa or Biesla?
Biesla, yeah.
Yeah, Biesla.
From
and
Leeds.
Yeah, so just trying. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to read all through of it and execute it as well as they could, but there were a few things in there that, at the end of the day, people are paying to play. So when we try and make it interesting, but at the same time competitive, and bit of rondo, bit of closing down, bit of finishing. You try and fit everything into one. And our sessions can go from an hour and a half, 2 hours, all dependent, because we only get to train once a week.
Definitely. And I think that's one of the biggest things. So for any managers watching, just that upskilling or just that up education of looking at other top EPL, even just managers across the countries, the Spain, the La Liga, Serie A. Is there any other sort of education that you do to help improve?
Look, a lot of it with me has been experience, because I've trained my whole life soccer, so I know certain drills, how to activate things, how to move, and gauging your team as well and saying, all right, this is where I think we're at. This is what I want to do from this session to get to this certain point. So for me personally, it was raising the intensity, getting everyone, really up and going, because at the end of the day, where we do play, one player can make a mistake and it can be very damaging, and they can score a goal. That's the quality that we do have here.
Definitely.
Yeah.
For any players looking at potentially joining, if you're scouting players or anything like that, what tips, advice would you have to them to help improve their game, to get them to that next level, if say they're playing all age, to get them into that Premier League level if they want to go on to reps or anything like that?
I would say work on your touch, and it's a physical league. It's a lot of running, and players need to understand that if you can't run for 5 kilometers straight, which is quite low on the bar. I don't know how many people do the beep test in the off season, but if you can't make that 10 as a base, then you have to say to yourself, all right, I need to get fitter, because when you're fitter, you make better decisions, you stick to your structure, and when you need to push, say for example you've got a game where everything's gone against you but you're still in it, that last 10 minutes you can run over teams if you're fit. So for 100%. Me, is get as fit as you can and make sure that you do know what you're doing with the ball. Have that football brain.
Definitely, and I think that's the biggest thing to touch up on is fitness. I classify as either being physically fit or being conditioned. Now a lot of players I know go to the gym and they push out heavy weights, extremely strong, but you do one sprint and they're like, boss, sub off. And I'm like, wait, we've only started 2 minutes into the game.
Conditioning,
so it's all conditioning. Conditioning is the biggest thing for a football player. Because 5 kilometers, if you think about it, is literally maybe half a half. 5 kilometers, because I know I average about 8 to 10 kilometers a game as a central midfielder. That's one half for me. So if you can't push out one quality half, that speaks volume about what the second half of your game is going to be like.
Exactly right. And it's about maintaining, how can I say, if you go to the gym, for example, and you lift a certain amount of weight, you lift 30 kilos, right? and you skip the gym for 2-3 weeks, do you think you'll be able to lift 30 kilos again?
Exactly.
No way. It's going to be difficult, and you can injure yourself. So if you condition yourself and you stay at, you don't have to be at the highest level, but you have to be at a certain level, you know? You can't just stop playing, wait 6 months and then play again. You're not going to be at the same fitness level.
100%, and that leads into a great point, which is getting a good off-season, making sure you're not on the beers, kebabs and everything, because a lot of players, off-season, they'll just splurge, they go out, enjoy, and then when pre-season starts, you're not starting from level 1, you're starting from -1.
Exactly.
And you've got to get back to 0 and then level 1, and then by the time the season comes, you're still not conditioned or fit, and it takes a couple games, and those couple games are extremely important, start of the season.
Your first few games are season defining, to be honest. And
100%.
You know, a lot of the boys that I see that show up to preseason like, oh, don't worry, I'll get match fit in a game. Or to me, it's like I don't want that at all. I want you to come and have a base fitness there, and then we can work on the sharpness. Because at the end of the day, you can be fit, but the sharpness, game sharpness, that comes with rigorous training.
100%. And then especially if you're not fit and you got the trials happening, those games started.
You could be injured.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that sets you off into a higher chance of injury. And then as you know yourself, with injuries as well.
Total vicious cycle of recovery.
100%. And especially if it's like an Achilles, that's your whole season gone and potentially your career as well.
Yeah.
Just from not doing the right off-season and pre-season training to begin with.
Definitely.
For anyone looking at starting soccer, they just thought one day, oh, you know what, I just want to play soccer with the boys or just join like a local league. Would you have any tips for someone just getting off the couch and just heading into soccer?
Yeah, I would never discourage anyone from doing it. Go and see for yourself how it is, you know. People play in work competitions, things like that. You can sign up to indoor soccer. Look, for me personally, when my season ended in outdoor, I was playing indoor. Not because I really wanted to. I think sometimes, depending on what surface it is, it can be very bad for your body. But that unique touch, you know, getting your skills developed.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to start. So, you know, it's October now. So by the time the season starts in April, March, things like that, you can play that much indoor soccer and actually develop your skills.
And it's also the part of conditioning as well, because it's such a smaller field, you're running constantly. Conditioning improves very quickly. And then touches, like you mentioned, I think it's like you have 600 touches in a game of futsal compared to maybe 200 or 300 in a full game of soccer as well. So touches increase threefold plus depending on which position on the field you play.
Well, that's the thing. With all the books that I read, with all the top managers, they say, you know, you have the ball in an outdoor game. You have the ball for maybe 3 to 4 minutes max. So what are you doing for the rest of that time? You're running, you're in position, you're communicating. So a lot of players don't understand that concept. Me as a central midfielder, my job wasn't taking on the entire team. My job was being an option and supporting the play. And if everyone is on board with that, you just see the smoothness of the way the team plays.
Definitely.
And a lot of people just need to grasp that concept. Look, I'm not going to have the ball all the time, but for my team, the way I work, I can really put a lot into it and get a lot out of it.
100% that attitude as well. If you don't have the ball, it's what you're doing without the ball that defines how well your team is going to play. Because if you're out of position, they're just going to walk straight through the defense and score. So it's also about...
And you'll get any good coach saying, that guy doesn't know what he's doing, keep hitting that line.
That's
just
right.
Keep on going there.
Until they break it down either left, right, through the middle, and then the goals start coming. Lack of confidence, and then they just run over. The team starts arguing, and I've noticed that in a lot of like the games that I've seen Sunday League, teams just collapse on each other because one player's made a mistake and everyone just chews on him.
Yeah, like I've seen games where it's been so close up until half time, you know, or just before half time, and they can score 3 goals in the space of 3 minutes because of just that miscommunication, and that's the way it is.
Definitely. So it's also being a 90-minute player and not switching off for any minute.
You can't switch off. And if you're not fit enough, you know, you don't have to be a superstar. But if you're not fit enough and you don't just grasp the concept of the game, especially in Premier League, there's no excuse for any player to come to the Premier League division and say, you know, I don't know what to do. We don't pick those players.
100%. And I think that's a good way to close off the interview as well, because it's all about conditioning, making sure you're physically fit, making sure you have a good understanding of the game as well. Because those two are going to help reduce the chance of injury on the field because you're not doing anything stupid, and it's going to improve your ability, making you stand out in the crowd and potentially getting scouted to go further as well.
Of course, definitely. We do have, I know for a fact that we do have, you know, the MPL coaches, you know, MPL4, things like that, they come to the games. If they hear that there's a good player, they'll be over there. And, you know, we had a player in the Rockdale first grade team who went to Wollongong United because they saw him in one game and they go, yeah, we'll take him.
100%.
So, you know, you can reach that level. Doesn't matter if it's park football.
And that's the biggest thing to take out of this episode is there's always people watching, So don't think for one moment in a game you can just go, oh, I just don't feel like playing. Always play, always have the confidence because like what happened to that player, they came in, got scouted, and now was playing MPL.
Exactly right.
Thank you again, Stephen, for coming onto the show today.
Mate.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.